Welcome back, fellow shop rats. Today we're going to talk about a subject that we seem to come back to a lot here on the channel, mostly because it is kind of it's a thing here at MKS that sets us apart a little bit from many other channels. We're going to talk about
the money game.
Let's watch the show intro.
This is My Cars Shop.
I seem to go through dry spells where I struggle to find topics sometimes for Talk About a Tuesday, and then there are other times like now when I can't record enough of these things because I have so many things I want to talk about. I seem to be like a bad check sometimes, and I always come back to this one subject, but I was involved in a discussion today. I was the one that started it, so devil's advocate. But my question was about the future of the antique car, not muscle cars and all that stuff, but antique cars themselves, cars specifically from, the 10s, 20s, teens, 30s, and the future of restoring antique cars. And the one thing that people seem to keep coming up with, and I get, is money. And they said that a lot of people can't afford the hobby because life is now too expensive. Well, I kind of get that in some ways, because if you do things the traditional way with a lot of these cars, you're gonna spend a boatload of money. Now, we haven't gone the really, really, really cheap and dirty route with the Oakland, and there's reasons for that we'll get into someday in the future. But if you look at everything else we do on the channel, we pretty much do it on the cheap and the dirty. And I got thinking about this subject, which we've talked about before, but somehow I see it a little differently and want to talk about it just a bit differently today. You're like me in your C60, coming at you like a freight train. You've been around for a few decades, and I've been fortunate enough to have been involved with this hobby all the way back into the 70s. Things radically changed 25 or 30 years ago with parts availability for so many of these cars. Now I'm going to focus more specifically on the muscle cars, but I remember back in the day it was hard to find parts. For example, back in the 80s when I had my other 68 Dodge Dart GT, it needed some body panels, and they may have still been available from OE, but they were bloody expensive. And so everybody had to find good used stuff, which was hard to find. And, well, if you didn't have money, then you had to just get some galvanized metal and some pop rivets and use some Bondo and just make what you needed to the best of your very crude, feeble ability, because that's what it was like. I think on an even grander scale, there are a lot of assumptions when it comes to this hobby today that people have, and they don't realize that they are sending a message to people who aren't involved in the hobby, and that message is you can't do this unless you have a lot of expendable capital and spare change and money that you don't need for other things. Now, let's face it, anybody that knows me knows I've always operated within my means when it comes to these cars, which means if I had very, very little income, I spent very, very little, but nothing stopped me from going ahead and finding a way to build a car no matter what my budget might be. I no longer do partners in business with any of my businesses. The exception would be the band, because my partner of 41 years over there and I trust each other implicitly, and he's probably the only person on the planet I am comfortable having a business partnership with. Otherwise, I want it my way, and I don't want to argue with partners about how things should or shouldn't be. So let me clarify that right up front. But one of the things that used to drive my former business partners crazy was me diving into some new business venture or some new project within a business, and them going to me, "Oh, how are we going to do that? We don't know how to do that." My attitude has always been, "I don't know, we'll figure it out." I have had business partners get downright hopped with me about that. One more time, if I hear you say you're going to figure it out, it's the way I've always been. I've always lived my life that way. I don't know, figure it out. I mean, every car that I've purchased, the Stitches Challenger is a great example. When I bought that car, I went, wow, that thing's a train wreck. How am I going to fix that? I don't know, figure it out. And of course, the Forsyth Duster, I don't know, figure it out. And when you look at the Golden Mullet, I don't know, I'll figure it out. But Mike, look at your income. You don't have extra money. You can't do that. You can't afford to do that. Well, of course I can't. But I'll figure it out, and somehow I'll keep it within my budget and my means, and I'll figure it out. As you know, if I had to wait for everything to be perfect, I wouldn't get anything done, and I would rather enjoy what I can do than enjoy nothing at all. That's just the way I am. But the bigger picture here is maybe not even subliminal, but the message that we're giving to young people, particularly that are interested in the hobby. If I've heard this once, I've heard it 100 times. These young guys are looking to us old farts to give them some pointers and direction on how to do one of these old cars, and immediately they start talking about playing the money game. Well, you need to buy this, 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 you need to buy this. No, you don't. You don't. And I feel like sometimes I'm the voice of one crying out here.
Oh, look, a little Pontiac.
Cool. The voice of one crying out here in the wilderness. I'd show you, but there's a truck in the way. When it comes to this stuff, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I remember reading in one of the Mopar forums the other day, a guy was talking about fabricating his floor pans, and some well-meaning but unknowing original Aaron the Spare guy in his ignorance pipes up and says,
Do it right the first time, think about the next guy.
What? It's his car. Let him enjoy it how he wants. Live in the moment. It's not like you can't cut the friggin' floor pan back out and replace it with a perfect one later. Where are these people's heads? We unknowingly just completely discourage people, rather than saying, yeah, here's some pointers on, you can fabricate. It doesn't have to look exactly factory, but here's what I've learned and what I've done. And maybe that's part of the problem, is most of these people don't know how to do it. I don't know. I'm just asking. I remember that happening in one of the A-Body forums. There was a young guy all enthusiastic about possibly buying a Dart, and he was asking some questions before he bought the car. And after about 75 responses, his answer was,
Forget it. This is way too expensive and beyond my abilities.
Pushing 500 episodes now on the channel. You know that there's times you do have to spend money, and with 40 years experience, you learn where that is and where it isn't, and what you can get away with, and context of vehicles and context of projects, and what I will do on my 318 Challenger wouldn't be what I'm doing on a 426 Hemi Restoration, etc., etc., etc. But the problem with legalism in all of its forms, no matter what area of life it's in, is it becomes very black and white, and there's only one way things can be done, and if you can't do them that way, then you shouldn't do them at all. And I get a real itchy finger when it comes to that stuff, but you already knew that. I still hear that ashtray's words in that one discussion.
Do it right, don't screw it up.
These are probably the ashtrays that are also out be crying how the hobby is dying, and there's not going to be another generation to continue doing these cars. Yes, I'm passionate about it. Obviously, that's what my channel is all about. Not just talk, but action and doing. And yeah, of course, I do a lot of chin wagging here on the channel. That's what Tuesdays are all about, and a lot of people don't watch these Tuesday videos. They're more like, shut up, puppet boy, get out there and mount some metal. I understand that, but for me, it's very important to share the entirety of the hobby, and that requires me doing a lot of mental exercises and thinking things through, and also looking at my own mindsets as well as mindsets that I see in the hobby. So my word for today is,
be very careful when sharing the hobby with the younger generation. Don't start going around
bragging and doing the unzipping contest and saying, "Oh,
I spent this much money." Okay,
we get it." But you know what? One of my favorite lines from the detective show Blue Bloods from Detective Courageous is,
"Put it back in your pants, boys."
she was talking about their car keys, right? I think it really behooves us to share our passion and enthusiasm with younger people to continue to see this hobby going and present the options of, I prefer to do the hobby this way. I really prefer to just go ahead and buy the parts because I don't have time to make things or I don't have the skills. But there are other guys who really love to take a blank piece of sheet metal and make all this stuff themselves. And it's up to you how you want to enjoy it. If you have the money, you can do this. If you have the time, you can do that. If you have neither, there's still little bites at a time you can take to move forward on a project and try to be an encouragement.
not an ashtray.
If we want to see the hobby continue, we have to encourage creativity and outside the box thinking and stop being perfectionistic and stop drinking the Kool-Aid of current thought that says if you're going to restore a car, you have to go buy all the top of the line parts. Now I know, beating a dead horse, I've said that before on the channel, but it was fresh on my mind and I think it was worth circling around today. Let's break the money game cycle and let's start thinking differently ourselves and recognizing that the choice we're making is one of many options here in the hobby and it's the best choice for us. But when we're sharing the hobby with others, let's also recognize that those people don't know about all of those choices. And it's up to us, the old farmers, to share those choices and options with other people so that we don't scare people away from the future of the hobby that we know and love so much. All right, that's going to do it, and we will catch you on the next one.
Unless I finally scared you away. But I'll still be here, playing my little piano and singing my little songs.
Continuing to beat my dead horse.
Rock!